All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Bill, for being here today. And thanks for all you viewers for coming in and checking this out on your early morning. So it's Tell Your Truth Tuesday today. And this is the perfect guest to have for Tell Your Truth Tuesday. Bill is actually has a TED Talk on storytelling. So I sent that out in the email, and it's a great way to just check out a little bit of his work. But Bill was referred to me through a friend, and he's built and exited multi-million-dollar companies, two of them, and has written for Forbes and Inc. magazine. He's talked and introduced and interviewed people like Tony Robbins and Grant Cardone, and a lot of people that we actually study a lot in network marketing, and these influencers that share about the power of transformation, the power of personal development. And I know Bill is a big advocate for that. And something else to keep an eye out for, in 2 months, he's got a book coming out called The Three Rules of Marriage. And this is something that he's really passionate about, how to share, how to stay in a long relationship, and how to operate your business from a place of life and love. And so I'll just pass it over to you, Bill, and let you share your own story and let you introduce yourself from what feels true to you today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Chelsea. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for having me here. I sincerely appreciate this opportunity. And for everyone who's joined us today, I really sincerely appreciate you. So by a show of hands, raise your hand if you've ever did or said something that you immediately wish you could take back. Yes, right. And raise your hand if you would like to experience significantly more happiness in your life. Yes, me too. Excellent. You are in the right space. So I'm going to share my screen so I can share with you the slides I put together for today. Hopefully this will work the way we want them to. All right. Oops. This is always the most fun part, getting everything set up correctly on Zoom. Now we're there. Perfect. So you should see Introduction to Mental Fitness. And Chelsea, interrupt me if you don't see that in the first slide. So we're going to do an introduction to mental fitness today. So my name is Bill Carmody. Chelsea did a fantastic introduction. I'm going to add just a few quick things. I'm a 25-year international keynote speaker. I am a trainer and a PCC coach. I support world-changing visionaries who are brave enough to build a better future. As a trainer and coach, I help people reach peak performance through strengthening their mental fitness. And that's what we're here to talk about today. And I'll start off by, because this is Tell Your Truth Tuesday, I'm going to start off by actually telling you a little bit of a story about what really landed for me when my coach asked me this one question. My executive business coach said, if your life were a movie, would anyone pay to see it? Oh, it just got me right there. I'm like, whoa, because the answer was, for me, a hard no. I knew that this was not what my life was. And what's crazy about that is that I had already received accolades for my business, having received two simultaneous years of being on the Inc. 5000 list. And we were the 83rd fastest growing private company in New York. And yet, I'll tell you, when I was on vacation with my family, right, I was thinking, wow, I've got all this total financial freedom. I've got the business that I wanted. Everything that I had said that I wanted as a 12-year-old, I had accomplished. I had my beautiful wife, my beautiful kids. I had the successful business. It was profitable. I was making money. But I remember distinctly standing out in front of this beach in St. Lucia. And what I should have been thinking about was how happy I was, how lucky I was, how joyful I had it, how my life was amazing. But there only one thought that was coming up for me. Is this all there is? Is this all there is? That's it. That's all I could think about. As I stood and looked at that ocean, it was like I felt numb. Because I'd made a promise with myself at 12 years old that when I had my successful business, my financial freedom, my incredible wife, my incredible kids, like, all these things that I promised myself, that I would be happy. But I wasn't happy. I just looked around and said, wow, I accomplished all these things and I'm not happy. I had broken that contract with myself that when I had accomplished all these things, I would be happy, and I wasn't happy. But I was fortunate because I have a lot of great friends. And one of my friends is Shirzad Chamine. And he wrote the book, Positive Intelligence, Why Only 20% of Teams and Individuals Achieve Their True Potential, and How You Can Achieve Yours. So as someone who is all about success, this was a great book, right? I wanted to achieve what's next, what's on the next goal. And yet, what is interesting about this book is that while it talks about how you can achieve your true potential, it also unlocked a really important key for me about why I was not truly happy. And it was the concept of mental fitness. Mental fitness, as defined by Shirzad Chamine, is your capacity to respond to life's challenges with positive rather than a negative mindset. It impacts your peak performance, your peace of mind, your well-being, even your healthy relationships. And that was my aha moment thinking about this, of why I wasn't happy, was because I had the negative self-talk in my mind, constantly looking me to achieve what's next. And we'll talk a little bit about those saboteurs in a moment, but just understand I had this insatiable drive since a very early age on what it meant to be happy. And I had a very specific vision of what I needed to accomplish in order to be happy. And if I hadn't accomplished these things, then I would not allow myself to feel or experience happiness. Mental fitness is based on a series of core research foundations. You've heard of positive psychology, I'm sure, neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and performance science. Shirzad Chamine did a research with over 500,000 participants in many countries and did his research and shared with Stanford when he was a Stanford professor, talking specifically about what he discovered. And so this is Stanford research-backed, massive study talking about happiness and understanding how we choose how we feel about anything. And what he came back with was this idea of factor analysis. And if you're not familiar with factor analysis, it is the root cause. It's the idea of radical simplification. So if I ask you, why are you happy? There's a lot of things that might come up. But if I were to actually help you understand, like, what are the root causes of both happiness and misery, it becomes a lot easier to understand. So the example here is, if you think about the root of the thousands of colors that exist, there's actually only 3: red, blue, and yellow. And when you combine red, blue, and yellow, or any variations thereof, you can create literally thousands and thousands and thousands of colors. But if you really understand that there's only 3 main colors, you can simplify what it is that you want to create. Same thing with mental fitness. There are only 3 muscles that are at the root of mental fitness. You have your saboteur interceptor muscle, your sage, and your self-command muscle. Very simple, easy to understand. So let's break it down. In your mind, you have 10 saboteurs and 5 sage powers. It really is that simple, that when you're thinking negative thoughts, it's coming from your saboteurs. And when you're thinking positive thoughts, it's coming from your sage. So let's talk about the interceptor. The judge. This is the one that every single person on the planet has. And there are 3 forms of judgment. There's, I judge myself, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, whatever that conversation is. I judge my situation. Why is this happening to me? Oh my God, it's COVID-19, whatever it is, the systematic racism that exists in the United States today. Like, why is this happening, right? You're judging the situation. And then there's the judgment of others and the judgment of other people, that they're not enough, that they're not good enough. And understanding those connections of those judgments, it's either you're judging yourself, you're judging a situation, or you're judging others. But that's not enough, because that negative self-talk has accomplice saboteurs. And so if you were to put this on a grid of style and motivation, at the assertive level, you have the controller, the hyperachiever, and the restless. That's me, by the way. I have number 1, controller, number 2, hyperachiever. So my whole life from 12 years old was driven by my need to get things done. My ability to achieve, my self-worth was completely married into the achievements that I had, which is why I ended up doing, became a 4th degree black belt and ran and exited 2 multi-million-dollar marketing agencies, right? The fact that I was a public speaker and I would get opportunities to go speak around the globe. These were all my achievements. And as soon as I achieved one, on to the next one. Never ever able to be happy with those achievements, to acknowledge myself for those achievements, but just go, 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 go. Same thing with the controller, my way. I built 2 multi-million-dollar marketing agencies and destroyed countless relationships as part of it. My first agency, I had 75 employees working for me. I don't think that, I hardly talk to any of them these days. And that's because if they knew me today, it would be a very different situation. But they knew the Bill of that time period, and I was very controlling. I was constantly breathing down people's necks. It was my way or the highway. And if you're experiencing that sense of controller, like, this is a very negative view of the world, that you can't actually see that there's other possibilities. So I'm focused explicitly on my controller and my hyperachiever. For some others, it's different. Some of it's about stickler, right? The motivation here is to be like perfect. So your stickler is what shows up when you want to be perfect, or your pleaser, when you're constantly giving to other people only to find out that how come nobody's giving back to me? Right? There's an expectation with that giving. That's where the pleaser comes from. Or the hypervigilant. Where's the other shoe going to drop? There's the avoider. Like, I don't want to do that, so I'm not gonna. I don't want to do my taxes, so I'm not going to. Okay, lateness and penalties and fees and all that stuff, but eventually I will force to do it, but I'm going to put it off to the very last moment. Or the victim, why is this happening to me? Or the hyper-rational, always trying to rationalize anything that happens, even when it's positive. I want to rationalize it out, take all the joy out of it. And so these are all of our saboteurs: the controller, the hyperachiever, the restless, the stickler, the pleaser, the hypervigilant, avoider, victim, and hyper-rational, as well as the judge. The judge is always in our corner, as well as everyone else. So there is an assessment that we can all take, and I'm going to share with you at the end of my talk for 5 minutes. If you take 5 minutes, you can find out the rank stack order of your saboteurs. I found this to be hugely helpful for me because it allowed me to see that my controller was number 1 and my hyperachiever was number 2. It's different for everyone. In this particular example with Sarah, she's got stickler as number 1 and hyperachiever as number 2. There's restless, pleaser, right? All of it down the line. You take a 5-minute assessment, you'll know exactly which ones they are for you. But what's also beautiful is at the end, it'll actually share with you what's going on, right? So the stickler, the characteristics, well, they're punctual, they're methodical, they're perfectionists. They can be irritable, tense, they can be opinionated and sarcastic, highly critical of their self and others, strong need for self-control and self-reliance, works overtime to make up for other people's sloppiness and laziness, is highly sensitive to criticism. So these are the characteristics. And if you're a stickler, you're like, that's me. The same way I was doing that with controller and hyperachiever. Now the thoughts is that there's a right is right and wrong is wrong. I know the right way. If you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. Others too often have lax standards. I need to be more organized and methodical so that others get things done, and I hate mistakes. And there's this constant feeling of frustration and disappointment with self and others, not living up to some ideal standard that's never achievable. And so this is the one side of this. Your saboteurs, they come from your brainstem, your limbic system, parts of your left parts of your brain. Your sage comes from the middle prefrontal cortex, empathy in your circuitry in the right sides of your brain. Your saboteurs motivate you through negative actions: fear, stress, anger, guilt, shame, insecurity. Your sage motivates you through positive emotions of empathy, curiosity, creativity, passion, and purpose. So your saboteurs might generate your success, but not your happiness. This is what I experienced. I was successful with my controller. I didn't think it was my enemy. I thought it was my friend. My controller and my hyperachiever were constantly motivating me to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And I did. I achieved all these amazing things. And yet I was unhappy. Now, your sage can get you higher levels of success and sustained happiness. That was the hard part for me when I realized the truth of that statement, because I had built, a $5 million and a $25 million marketing agency. But how much more successful could I have been at both ventures if I tapped into my sage as opposed to my controller and my hyperachiever? That opportunity cost is sometimes hard to measure because I don't know what it would have been. I know that I would have been more successful because I would have also had peace, fulfillment, happiness, empathy. When people came in and they were concerned, I would have had empathy for them as opposed to like, how is this distracting from the work they're supposed to be doing, right? The wrong thinking in that space. Now, the most often question that I get when I'm sharing this information is, aren't negative feelings helpful to us? Aren't they supposed to be helpful? So think about this for a minute. What if you put your hand on a hot stove? You want to go, ouch, and you want to be done. That's how long a negative emotion should support you in a very positive way. You want to feel that heat. You want to say, ouch, and you want to be gone. But what happens is, as you put your left hand down, the right hand of the saboteur comes and pushes it on the stove. See, feel this. Feel how hot this is. This is why you're supposed to feel. That's what happens when your saboteurs have you and your judge has you. When you suddenly realize that you're experiencing judgment, or you suddenly realize that your controller is telling you this is the only way to do things, or your hyperachiever is saying, well, that's fine that you accomplished that, but what's next? It's holding your hand on that hot stove and not being connected to the happiness that could be. So negative emotions are only helpful for 1 second as an alert signal. Staying in negative emotion hurts ability to see clearly and respond with empathy, curiosity, creativity, or laser-focused action. The negative emotion is your saboteur. It's as simple as that. When you start to realize that every negative thought we have is either our judge or one of the other saboteurs, right? Then it becomes easier to realize that's not me. When you start to realize that the positive thinking and the things that come inside your mind, that's your sage. And the decisions we want to make in our lives need to come from our sage. So let's talk about your sage for a second. The sage lives in the region of the brain associated with positive emotions, peace and calm, clear-headed focus, creativity, and the big picture. Operates from the sage perspective. So what do I mean by the sage perspective, right? So the sage perspective is that every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift and an opportunity. Every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift or an opportunity. I get challenged by this all the time. No. I got fired from that job. There's no way that that's a gift. Talk to me in 6 months. Because we can't always see it in that moment. Right now, the unrest in our country is a gift. It is a gift. Because it's basically forcing the entire world to look at racism in an entirely different way. The systematic pillars of racism are finally being addressed and looked at. And we get to see that there's a gift in this. And we see the gift that will actually transform our entire country and our ways of being. And so it's really interesting when you start to see this. Which perspective is true? The saboteur that this is bad, bad, bad. Or the sage, this is a gift. And think about that for a minute. Take one of the most traumatic experiences in your life. And if you have the distance of time, you can see there's a possibility that there is a gift in this. It's sometimes really hard to see when it happens, especially tragedies. But when you can actually unpack it, we can see exactly that there's usually a gift of knowledge, a gift of power, or a gift of inspiration. So which true? Which is true? The saboteurs, the feeling that this is bad, or the sage that this is a gift? Whichever you believe becomes true. So if you believe that it's bad, it becomes bad. If you believe that it's a gift, it becomes a gift. One of the most extreme examples of this that I can share with you is the woman in California whose son was hit by a drunk driver and killed. And you could say to me, there's no gift in that. Zero gift in that. His life was tragically ended. He wasn't the drunk driver. He was tragically killed by a drunk driver, there's no gift, right? That's what the saboteur says. This woman went to the man who killed her son at his arraignment and asked if she could speak on his behalf. And she said, I forgive you. And she said, I don't condone what you did. And what you did to my son is inexcusable. And you're right to go to jail. And you should pay the penalty for your crime. But I want you to know that I have no anger in my heart and I forgive you. Now that's some next level sage. How many parents would be able to do that? I wouldn't. I'm not at that level. If a drunk driver killed my son, I don't think I could ever get to that stage. At least that's the way I feel now. That woman went on to create Mothers Against Drunk Driving. What was the gift in her son being killed by a drunk driver? The gift was that inspiration. How can I stop other mothers from experiencing what I've just experienced? How can I save more children by going out and limiting and eliminating drunk drivers? Mothers Against Drunk Drivers started with that tragedy. And while I do not wish anyone's child to be murdered by somebody else in a drunk driving accident, I do want you to be able to see the gift that was created from that. And I'm sure in the moment that it was happening, and certainly shortly thereafter, there was no way to see that gift. But if you stretch it out over time, you realize the world benefited from that tragedy, as we will with other tragedies. Self-command muscle. So I want to give you all an experience of what it's like to shift. And so we can do this with eyes wide open, and it's really simple. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second so that I can go look right at you in the camera here. So what I'm gonna ask you to do is to take your fingers just like this and rub them together, just like this. And what I'm gonna ask you to do is to drop into your body as you're rubbing your fingers together. Whatever thoughts are coming in, just let them go and stay. Just feel the fine fingertip ridges in your fingers. Just keep doing it and notice what's going on. Any thoughts that come up, just let them go. Keep rubbing your fingers back together with such fine detail that you can experience and feel the fingertip ridges. Okay, and stop. That was a PQ rep. What did you notice? And by the way, this is not rhetorical. If you'd like to speak into it, take yourself off mute, join. And if not, we'll have time for Q&A at the end.
That felt really good for me. I just was stressing out in my head about something in my head, and as soon as I started doing it, it just whoosh, I felt this sense of calm just come over me. So thank you for that. I love that.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for speaking into that, Nicole. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I felt very present, and the only thing I could feel was the ridges of my fingertips. There was nothing else in the world, and nothing really was bubbling up at all. So it was an interesting experience. Thank you.
You're welcome. And what's really fascinating about that experience, and we'll talk more about it in a second, is that this was just what, about a minute to 2 minutes, that we find ourselves in the space of meditation, which I love. I love meditation. I've been meditating for years. But here's the challenge. Can you meditate with your eyes open, looking at somebody else in a stressful situation, right? That's mastery. And what's interesting about what we just did is the ability to do an interrupt of your pattern by being able to actually drop into your body in the moment something's happening. So even as you're feeling yourself elevate, doing those PQ reps, this you can do down by your side. No one has to even see you're doing them. And watch that you drop down in your body. And when somebody's coming at you and you can do that, you can feel like the simmering that happens. A tension that comes up and then it just drops back down. That's mastery as we start to build how we create our mental fitness in ourselves, and we can support others in doing the same. So I'm going to go back to round up my presentation, and we'll have plenty of time to have a little bit more discussion at the end. So you just experienced a PQ rep. Excellent. So this is the simplicity of the mental fitness operating system. If you're feeling negative emotions, stop. You're in saboteur mode. Don't make decisions in a saboteur mode. Don't react in a saboteur mode. For God's sake, don't send the email in saboteur mode, right? If someone's hijacked and they send you a nasty gram, don't reply. Do your PQ reps. Drop back into your body. Be in that space of sage, not responding in saboteur. Do some PQ reps to quiet the saboteurs and activate your sage. Assume the sage perspective that every problem can be converted into a gift and opportunity. And there's some problems are obvious to see and some of them are next level, really, really challenging. But I promise you, if you take that perspective that every problem can be converted into a gift and opportunity, you'll find it. And then create the gift by using the sage powers of empathy, curiosity, creativity, and calm and clear-headed action. See, that's the beauty of the sage, that you have empathy for somebody else. You know, Tony Robbins said it this way, that there's only two types of communication in the world, a loving response and a cry for help. The cry for help may be, fuck you, right? That somebody's really just losing their mind and they're coming at you. That can still be a cry for help. If you cannot be activated and feel that hit you with that attack, and instead drop into your sage and see the childlike innocence of the person who's frustrated. Think about it. If you fell over a cruise ship, would you politely say, please, sir, please, ma'am, would you hand me a life preserver? No, you'd be like, I'm drowning. And if you could think about that, that's how most people are acting in their communication when it's not a loving response. They're drowning and they need your help. If you can drop into your sage and you can really hear it for the way it's coming across, then not the way it's coming across, but the underlying message, you can have empathy. And then from empathy, you can go to curiosity, being curious about what's going on for them right then. Creativity of learning like what's possible, how could you support them? Calm, clear-headed action. Sage is not about a navel-gazing exercise. It's clear-headed action that once you know what needs to be done, you do it. You see the person over the side of the boat, you give them the life raft. You don't have to ask for permission, you just do it. Same thing. When we have clear-headed action, we're able to take the actions that support us and the people around us. So question, is it really possible to shift from saboteur to sage response, even in those tough challenges, even when somebody's coming at you? Yes, but the speed and depth of the shift depends on your mental muscle strength. I can tell you, when people used to cut me off in traffic, instant response. Now, I do a PQ rep or two if I need it, and I just think, wow, I hope they get where they need to go. I imagine that they were late for an important interview or that their wife or husband is in the hospital, and I really just let it go. I don't hold on to it. It doesn't activate my road rage anymore, but I've had a lot of experience doing this because lasting positive change requires more than insight. What you get today in our session together is the 20%, the insight. What I'm actually inviting you to do is to create the mental muscle. That's the 80%. So we're going to do this a couple ways. Number one, the simplest action you can take. I ask, never leave a session like this without taking action. So the simplest, easiest action you can take today is to actually just go to positiveintelligence.com/assessments. Positiveintelligence.com/assessments, and you can see how you self-sabotage yourself. It's free. It's a 5-minute assessment. And you will see instantly what are your biggest saboteurs that drive you. Hugely valuable. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is success requires an intense initial practice. You can't defeat a gang of 10 bandits by sending on one new fighter per day for 100 days, right? So the idea there is that we get to do 15 minutes a day for 6 to 8 weeks to really develop your mental fitness muscles. And there's been a lot of different tries. I mean, I've actually worked with people who are deep, deep meditators, people who've been meditating their entire lives. And when they're in meditation, they're able to drop into it. But when they get hijacked, either through road rage or somebody else pushes their buttons, no matter how good of a meditator you are, if you don't have these mental fitness strength muscles to be able to self-command and to have a different choice, then what ends up happening is, despite all this great work, we still get activated. And so again, I am very pro yoga, pro meditation, right? I'm a 4th degree black belt myself. I love meditation. And this changed everything for me. Being able to do this in a short 2-minute sense, you know, to be able to do it, allowed me to have that power to make a different choice, even in the heat of battle. And so the invitation here is to do a full 6 weeks of mental fitness to strengthen your inner stage. Let me say that again, because I was tripping over myself. 6 weeks of mental fitness to strengthen your inner stage. There. And so what that looks like is a 1-hour video recorded session, as well as exclusive app guiding your daily practices. So this is a daily meditative process, but it's not happening like in the morning and at night. It's actually interrupting your entire pattern. So you're doing it 2 minutes every 3 hours. And so you do it from 9 to 12, 12 to 3, 3 to 6, right? So you have, during your day, you're disrupting your own patterns to check in with yourself and actually build your self-command muscles. Because it's all fine and good to do things in a controlled environment. If you were going on vacation, I would say, don't do this program. I want you to do it in the hairiness of the work, the job, whatever you do. This is the time to do it, so you get the opportunity to interrupt the patterns that we've all created for ourselves. And then there's also an interactive gym, which essentially allows you, if you need additional support beyond those little interruptions, you can do a 2-minute, a 5-minute, or a 15-minute guided PQ reps, exactly the way we just did it with the fingers there, but they have breathing versions, they have eyes wide open and moving, sitting down, tension relaxation. There's like a whole bunch of different pieces, which they call it the gym. And then there's also a cohort, a community of other people who are taking the program at the same time that you can coordinate with and share your experiences. So it's 6 weeks in duration, a 1-hour video each week, 15 minutes of daily practice on the app, 8 chapters of positive intelligence, which will actually be provided, a PDF version will be provided, and then through the app, continuing to receive mental fitness coaching through the entire year, okay? So if that sounds interesting to you, if you go to the Positive Intelligence website, this is a $1,000 program. Because you've attended this session and because this is part of this whole, let's get ourselves in that great place, I have cut that rate in half. So for $500, you can do that entire 6-week program. Just go to billcarmody.com/mentalfitness and you can sign up right there. And if you choose not to do that, I totally appreciate it. But at the same time, I want you to really think about how you can develop your muscles and your mental fitness so you can be strong, especially in these times when you're feeling and experiencing your saboteurs and you're in that space of negative self-talk. I really invite you to shift it into the positivity, whether it's doing more of what we just did, whether it's coming to a 6-week program like what I'm offering here, or whatever it is for you. Look for ways you can interrupt that negative self-talk so you can really get the joy and happiness out of your life. Okay? And thank you. From that, I'm going to open this up to our discussion. And I want to thank everyone before I do that to say thank you so much for joining me today and for listening to my introduction to mental fitness. I really do hope that you've enjoyed this. And now let's have some fun. Let's do some Q&A. We have plenty of time to chat. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you would, raise your digital hand. If you don't know how to raise your digital hand, when you click on participants, you can see raise my hand. And that way I can put a spotlight on you. I can call on you and we'll go through and we'll have some conversations. Good? Oh, Olivia, perfect. You're up. I'm putting the spotlight on you. All right.
Hi. Hi. So I am curious, when did you start doing mental fitness exercises and what shifted for you in order to step into doing these exercises yourself?
So the first question is, I started doing this late last year. And I actually, let me put this back. I began this program during, it was the fall, like September timeframe. So I've been doing this since September. So coming up on not quite a year. And what opened up for me was the ability to really savor the joy and happiness of everyday life. And so my life didn't change in terms of the work that I was doing or anything along those lines. I had made some other shifts prior to that. But what I found was daily, my happiness quotient went way high. So like even simple things like just spending more quality time with my family, spending time with my wife and friends, like I was savoring life in ways that I hadn't before. Was that the second part of your question, or do you have a different part that you wanted me to answer?
Yeah, so the second part was what, so I really like that you told us what shifted for you after you started it, but what shifted for you before that instigated you to start doing mental fitness exercises?
What shifted before I started doing mental fitness? Okay, cool. Hang on. I got a few extra slides on that. So I promised that Olivia was not a plant. I just thought if this did come up, I had a few extra things I would share. So give me 1 second and I will put this back up and share what happened. Okay, so to continue this story, this is Tell Your Truth Tuesday. So I really went back from my coaches asking me the question, if your life were a movie, would anyone pay to see it? That was the first thing that totally shifted for me, saying, you know what? No one would pay to see my movie. So I thought back to when was it that I felt most alive and when I felt most happy. And I distinctly remember that I was on the airplane flying to Toronto. And when I was flying to Toronto, it was my first travel business expense, that I went through. I was working for Ogilvy and Mather at the time. And on the plane, I thought, how great is my life? I got this flight to Toronto. I've never been to Toronto. I get to fly to Toronto for free. I get to stay at a hotel for free. I get all my meals for free. And then I get to do what I love, which is to talk to IBM about building websites. Like, this is amazing. Like, I just won the lottery. And so when I went there, I didn't have the first night, I didn't have like a dinner to do with the client. So what I ended up doing was I went to the ATM and I was in Canada and I withdrew. I said, well, let's see, if it was a flight, let's call that $200 plus the hotel and then $200. So it's probably about $400 all in between the flight, the hotel, and the meals that I would have had to pay for myself. So I went to withdraw $400, but I was in Canada. So at the time, the exchange rate was 2 for 1. So I got 800 Canadian dollars out. And what I did is I walked around the city. And every time a homeless person came up to me and said, sir, do you have $1? I would say, yes. So normally I'd be like, no, right? That's how I had trained myself in New York City, was like, I just overwhelmed, I can't do it. But this time I said, yes, I'm gonna give you more money than you're asking for. And my only question, it's not a requirement, but my question is, would you be willing to share with me how you got here? And you don't have to, I'm gonna give you money regardless, but if you'd like to, I'd love to hear your story. And what opened up was transformational for me. I had this gentleman here, this example of one of the homeless people I had spoken to. He actually sold his house so that his daughter could go to college. She didn't know that he was homeless. He had a cell phone. He would take phone calls. She thought that he was in the same house they grew up in. He went to the gym to take showers and everything else, but he chose to be homeless so that his daughter could have a better life. And that was just one of many, many, many stories I got that night, going from person to person and just listening to our humanity and our shared experiences, and over and over and over again. I brought that back to my youth group. I am a senior seminar advisor for the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock. And so I've been doing that for 12 years now. This is my 13th year as a youth group advisor. Now every year, 3 times a year, we do what we call a midnight run, where we get all kinds of food and clothing and bring it to the Manhattan. And in the process of doing that, we distribute all this clothes, fooding, toiletries, etc. But what I've shared with my youth is that it's not about the clothes. It's not about the food. It's about connecting with the humanity of the people that are having a homelessness experience. They are not homeless. They're having a homelessness experience. And our opportunity here is to really connect with their humanity. And that sort of like really started to fill me up. And so I kept going. I told you, I became a 4th degree black belt. I'm actually testing for my 5th degree black belt this year. If they allow us to do it in the fall, I'll be testing for 5th degree. If not, I'll do it next year. I really stepped up my game, and I really decided that I wanted to do an Ironman. So that's 140.6 mile journey, 2.2 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a full marathon, 26.2 miles after that, right? and I finished the top 50%. I took my family to Costa Rica. This is me with my boys going down whitewater rafting, which is amazing. And on that trip, I got a phone call from Tony Robbins' publicist who said, hey, are you going to be back on Tuesday? Which I just happened to be coming back. They said, great, because if you are, Tony Robbins would like to have you stand next to him while they are ringing the NASDAQ opening bell. So I had an incredible experience doing that, hanging out with Ariana Huffington and some just incredible, amazing people there. And I even got to spend some quality time with Tony Robbins at some of his events, got to interview him for his movie, Netflix movie, I'm Not Your Guru. And then I even had an opportunity to deliver a keynote speech with Sir Richard Branson in Brazil. So the reason I share all this with you is because what shifted for me, Olivia, and this is the answer to your question, is I turned my passion into my profession. When you do what you love and you do what the world needs, you're on mission. When you do what you love and you do what you're good at, you find your passion. When you do what you're good at and you do what the world needs, you find your profession. When you do all three, you find purpose. And that is the rest of that story that I did not share earlier. Thank you for bringing that into space. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's see here. Excellent. Chelsea, yes, please. I'm coming to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had said this month was going to be judgment-free June. And so I was like, okay, how do I start to take this judgment-free June and be really discerning about my thoughts? Because that's what's actually happened. It's less about judging, because we are always judging. And what I'm noticing is like, where are those judgments rising? And yesterday I was like, oh man, maybe it's just eclipse season. It's happening. And what I'm really hearing from you is it is like that discernment between, is this the saboteur? Is this the sage? And just to know that those are each at play, and then having tools for it is so helpful. And something that I feel like you brought up in your video was your TED Talk was that you imagined all these things that you worked for, your family, and all this thing that was maybe your motivator, your why. You were imagining them actually standing at your gravesite and not actually enjoying your presence, because there was you weren't actually taking care of yourself from an inside out approach. And I'm just curious about that transformation process, especially with something so monumental as imagining your own gravesite, how that affected your transformation process, and living for your real mission, maybe the mission underneath the mission.
Chelsea, I love you. Thank you so much for bringing that up. So what you're actually sharing is that was what I did speak to in my TED Talk, was the moment that this all shifted. So Olivia was asking what happened after the shift. You're asking about the shift itself. And so the shift itself happened at my very first Unleash the Power Within event at Tony Robbins. And what he did is he did a really cool visualization exercise, which they call the Dickens process. And it's basically like, the ghost of Christmas past, future, present. And what we did was we imagined our life without change. Like, if you choose to change nothing, what does your life look like 1 year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And I couldn't see past 5 because I was already dead. And in my visualization, that was as real as breathing air for me. It was not a question. It was no hesitation. I was 100% going to be in a grave in 5 years with no change, 0. I was 265 pounds, the heaviest I've ever been. And that was in that moment when I said, I am doing an Ironman. And it was like, wait, that's crazy. You've never even done a marathon. Don't care. I'm doing an Ironman. I declared it to be so. I brought forth that which was impossible and made the impossible possible, because what I saw was that I had destroyed my health. My health itself was just the last thing I worried about. Money first, family second, right? You know, I started to take that back. Money first, business second, family third, if I had time for them. And then way at the bottom of the list was my health. And it was showing. And then when I started to realize what really tripped it up for me, what really changed the transformation, the moment of transformation for me, was when I could visualize my children who were young at the time, like 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there, crying on my gravesite. When they started bawling on my gravesite, that was enough for me to let go of anything else, any resistance that I had to taking care of my body. That was the moment where I was committed to making a change. And that was the complete transformation for me, was stepping into that possibility and really owning it. Because think about it. Anyone can say I'm going to do a marathon or say they're going to do an Ironman. Like, it's 3 hours of training every day for almost 6 months. I did it for 5 months. And that kind of intensity only comes from a drive that is like, I am here to change. And what I did do is I dropped the 65 pounds. I went from 265 to just under like 199, 98 when I actually did my Ironman. And, you know, and then I've still have had battles with that since then, because when you stop 3 hours of training every day, you sort of see that experience, which of course I love what you're talking about with, you know, gut health and supporting, you know, the nutrients of the body. I love all that, because that's what I've had to learn, was basically how to do all that in a more healthy and longevity way. Because prior to that, you know, it was extreme. I was still under my controller's thumb. So my controller said, okay, you want to get rid of your health? Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do an Ironman, rah! Right? And so, and my hyperachiever, I'll do an Ironman, right? Still, I finished those things, and it didn't shift my long-term health, because my saboteurs were still driving me. And only when I realized that was the last hook. That was the last letting go of being able to actually be in that space of happiness and tranquility, without having to do 3-hour workouts every day, and without feeling that my controller and my hyperachiever had to be satisfied in order for me to experience happiness. That's the shift. That's what mental fitness did for me. And that's why I say it really did save my life, because even with all those other shifts, if I still wasn't going to experience happiness, it wasn't going to work out, you know?
Yeah, it seems like you really had to experience all the extremes to find where that middle way was for you.
I hope that's not true for everyone, but for me, that's exactly it. I've always played on the edges. I've always gone all the way out there and fallen down many, many, many times. And yeah, that's I needed to experience it to know what was possible and to see what I was made of, and then be able to turn it around in such a way that I could actually create something that was sustainable for me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got about 10 more minutes if anybody else has a question or comment that they want to put into the space. And by the way, Vanessa, thank you for your comment about the homelessness experience rather than categorizing persons as homeless. I completely appreciate you picking up on that. It was a huge distinction for me. That is, I learned in Tony Robbins about identity. And so when you call someone a homeless person, you're giving them that identity, whether they own it to themselves or not. And that's not accurate. They're having a homeless experience, and it's temporary, and it means they can change at any time, and they often do. So that's good. Thanks, Vanessa. Anyone else want to jump in? Anyone want to play? Anyone have something they want to Yes, Olivia, back to you, please.
It's a little bit off topic. Sorry, I have two,
Oh,
my
okay.
audio and my video.
I got you.
So I am curious, what are your thoughts on change? Do people, because I heard you talk about changing into something else. So I'm curious by what your thoughts are on if change is real, or if change is a shift, or just the word change in general, I guess.
I love that. That's a great question. Thank you. My best answer to that is change is inevitable. Progress is not. So there is change. Life is change. Every single moment of every single day, we're looking at a new possibility, and change is going to happen. But my business coach would have said it this way: are you designing your life, or are you managing your circumstances? That was like a yes. Because I found that early in my life, I was managing my circumstances. I was in reaction to each and everything that was happening to me. I was in reaction to the dating scene. I was in reaction to the jobs that I had. I was in reaction to my coworkers. React, which meant I was managing my circumstances. So was that change? Absolutely. I was changing my temper every 5 minutes as to why I was so pissed off about something, right? Change, right? But the distinction is when I say progress is not, progress is by design. So change is inevitable. Progress, you need to actually spend time designing your life in order to ensure progress happens in the way you want it to happen. So if you really are committed to an outcome, that progress means taking time to reflect on what it is that you're committed to, and then to not be deterred by the circumstances. Because even when I was committed to my Ironman, I had no idea how I was going to do it. No idea I was going to pull it off, right? I was committed to it though. And my circumstance was, well, you don't have a trainer. And what happened was I interviewed Siri Lindley, and she's a 5 or 6 time world champion triathlete. And after I interviewed her for a book I was writing for Inc. at the time, I told her that I was committed to doing an Ironman, and she said, "Would you like me to train you?" That's like Keith Richards saying, "Would you like some guitar lessons?" It's like, yeah. So, it's like when you commit to something, I find the universe conspires to support you. And so that commitment for me was about, I'm committed to my health. I'm committed to my life, and I'm committed to doing an Ironman as a way to demonstrate my commitment to those things. And so that was really designing the outcome that I wanted to see. So change, yes, but progress was based on that. And continuing, even after the Ironman, continuously doing progress to say, how do I basically be in such a way that working out doesn't take over my life, but I'm still in a healthy space, that I can still live a way that I'm like living by, in a standard that allows me to have the body that I want, and the physique and the actual health that I'm committed to. Yes, Olivia? Yes? Nodding head? Great, thank you. Thumbs up. Anyone else? Come on, this is fun. Let's play. Someone else got something. I know you have something. Don't be shy. Come play with me. Come on. Sass, I can see you reaching for it. Go for it, Sass.
What's your big goal right now that you're working on?
Thank you, Sass. I'm up to a lot of big things. Number one, as Chelsea mentioned at the beginning, I am in the process of publishing my next book called The 3 Rules of Marriage. And as I celebrate my 20 years of blissful marriage with my wife, Elena, and we modeled our marriage off of her parents, who are 65, blissfully married. And you're like, no way, 65 years, no way. They were patting each other on the butt when I met them. Like, they're 65 years in and they still act like newlyweds. It's ridiculous. So that's the first thing, is that I will be launching the book itself will be coming out in the next 2 months. I'll send some announcements out for that. I have a website then specifically supporting that book that will be launched probably in the next 2 weeks. The 3rulesofmarriage.com. It's not up now. And then I'll be doing some relationship workshops around that specifically. So that's one of the big games I'm up to. The other one is that I'm becoming a transformational trainer. And so I've been so moved by the work that I've been doing in the Altru Center, Center for Altruistic Living. Altru has allowed me to actually go in as a trainer, and now I'm working with them to become a transformational trainer and be able to do this work professionally. And so even though I've been a public speaker for 25 years and I've got my own workshops and I've been doing trainings all along, there's a distinction between doing marketing and public speaking trainings, which is really where I've made most of my training work, and doing transformational work, which is what I'm up to next. Thank you, Sass. This is a great question. Thank you for letting me play. Excellent, excellent. All right, we got time for one more.
I just love this so.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I just love this so much. So, really, just to share a little bit about, I'm doing my business is called the Transformation Company, and it's really about the gut health that Bill was referring to. And so just for you to say you've been through all these facets of life and all these different realities, and coming back to being like, it is about my health, and that is my wealth, and then my why, your commitment, your why to your family, your why for your health and life and drive is really like moving your action. And you said like, it takes a commitment. And I just, it takes a commitment. Yes. But it's like, it has to come from that core why that's so strongly for you. And I just also wanted to briefly just ask you a little bit about this diversity and inclusion ally and training that you're up to. And if you want to touch on that, it's really present.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you for that. Thank you for putting that in the space. Yes. As part of my journey, one of the things in transformation is I had a lot of men and women of color that I love and respect, that I've had amazing journeys with. And one of them reached out to me, Eileen Daniels had reached out and actually asked me to join her in a transformation of race, which was basically like thinking about, racism in America. And my first reaction, and I'm embarrassed to say this, was, didn't we handle that? Like, I was so ignorant. I was so ignorant about just the fact that like racism in America was no longer a problem. I just really thought that this was how things were. And she encouraged me to join, and I read White Fragility, which is the first book we read, and it just blew my mind how I have, as a cisgender, heterosexual, white male of privilege, how I have really benefited from the pillars of racism. And it really, it hit me hard because I realized that I was perpetuating the racism all around me. And I was so ignorant of it, and I was so benefiting by it that it just seemed like, well, this system works for me, so it's got to work for everyone. And it was such a lie that I bought into. And yet it was authentic for me. Like, I really didn't believe that there was a problem. And so after that, that's really that sparked a flame. And so I then read So You Want to Talk About Race, which is another fantastic book. And I started really getting into it. And then How to Be an Inclusive Leader by Jennifer Brown. Jennifer Brown is, she's gay, and she is a blonde hair, blue-eyed, gay woman who has now also leading a lot of charge and transformation, specifically around gender diversity, as well as, inclusive behaviors in corporate America. And what she taught me as part of this was that, even though I desire to be an ally, I'm not an ally. I'm an ally in training. And the distinction there is that I don't get to call myself an ally. What I get to do is say that I am doing the work as best as I know how, and that I am open to receive when somebody sees that I'm an ally in training. What it means is that I'm open for feedback, that I get it, that I'm still perpetuating racism without always being conscious of doing so. I still make conversations. Instead of saying my pronouns are he, him, his, I sometimes make the mistake and say my preferred pronouns are, which is completely wrong. But again, until someone who is transgender or someone who's willing to correct me on that and say, hey, it's pronouns, not preferred pronouns. It's not a preference. Okay, got it. So it's that's what I mean by ally in training is I'm constantly learning. And now I realize I get to do the work, and I get to help people who essentially don't look like me, who haven't had my experiences, who actually need my support in ways that will empower not just them, but just be able to help dismantle these pillars of racism that I see all around me. So the ability for me to do that is why I call myself an ally in training, and why I put, prominently my pronouns on my LinkedIn profile and my signature line, because these are the things that matter to me. I want to make people understand that I am attempting to be an ally. I am an ally in training. I want to be part of the solution and no longer part of the problem. I've benefited by being part of the problem for many decades, and now I get to relive the rest of my life being part of the solution.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you just for being so vulnerable and forthright about your story. And I think we all gained so much. And yes, Enrica says, I'm glad this was recorded. So I'm also glad this was recorded. And I'll definitely take all your links that you suggested in the call to action and send that out to everybody, so we can all, do our PQ test and tune more into our own transformation process. So, yeah, if there's anything else that anyone wants to say, go for it. If not, we'll wrap up in the next couple minutes. And I just wanted to give my deep gratitude for saying yes to this offering. And if you want to talk about the organization you want to give to today, and plug that in, we're always about just expanding where we're giving our monetary funds.
Yes. So, and the link that I put on was for Black Lives Matter. It really matters to me. And sorry, I'm going to choke up here. The thing about it is that I just find that like the work that I do, it's so important to me, but the fact that I can make a difference for other people is why I do this work. And so the Black Lives Matter to me is such an important cause right now, because it's not now, it's always been, but I think this is a time where we're going to see systematic change in the world. And I'm so excited to have any small part to play in sort of helping to make that change possible, and just dismantling the pillars of racism that I see. So yeah, that's why it's near and dear to my heart. And that's why, if you're willing to give, that's where I ask you to give. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you everyone for participating. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for really asking such powerful questions and putting in the space. The place allowed me to make this whole thing much, much better. I am because you are. Thank you. I love you. Appreciate you.
Thank you. We all rub our fingers together, give like a little finger PQ goodbye. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll see you tomorrow for Wealth Wednesday.
Woohoo! Bye.
Bye.